So I'm excited to continue on the topic on the 4 main goals that airlines focus on when providing service to customers. And in any airline operation in any part of the world, these are the 4 main things that these airlines must deliver on. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks for clicking again. If you're new, thanks for joining. And I think it is important to say that the goal here is to educate, inform, and hopefully help you to achieve your own dreams as well. Currently, I fly for an airline. I've been through the process as an aspiring pilot, now a current pilot. So I'm excited to talk about these things. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into it, there's something I want to address real quickly. A lot of people have been reaching out to me asking for maybe some one-on-one time and maybe to discuss their unique situations. And if you are one of those people who want a one-on-one time with me to talk about different aspirations in aviation, please know that there's a link below. Hopefully I put it, I don't forget, that you can use to book a service with me, and we'll talk about these things at length, in which you would walk away with information and understanding of what you need to do to achieve your goals. I'm proud and happy to say that I've reached out to a lot of people, I've met with a lot of people, did all these one-on-ones with a lot of people, and to be honest, a lot of them are giving me some feedback that is very encouraging, and I think I do want to do this even more for those who are interested. In the last video, I introduced these 4 main goals, and I call them goals because every airline strives to achieve these goals when it comes to providing service to passengers. And if you understand this, it's definitely a step above a lot of people that may not know this information that are trying to get into the aviation industry. And I'm going to share with you these 4 main goals. I've talked about the first one in the previous video. If you haven't seen that video, it is linked below. Please check it out. Why is this important? I think I already covered that. I'm not going to repeat myself, because when you understand this information, you are better prepared for your interviews. You're better prepared for the assessment. You're likely to do better when you go in for those things. Now, these 4 main areas are crucial amongst all the things that you will benefit from a video like this. 1, it increases your competency level because you understand what is required in a question, in an assessment, in a scenario, or an hypothetical question. The next thing is it increases your level of awareness or situational awareness in a given situation or exercise, or maybe it's even an hypothetical question. Okay. And then it improves your ability to make the right decisions. All right. So your decision making gets better because you understand the factors that are most crucial when it comes to providing a service, especially in flying passengers. And of course, the importance of customer service will be better understood in any given environment you find yourself. In the last video, talked about safety, and we went into details on that, and I shared some terms with you which I'm going to just refresh your mind on shortly. We talked about efficiency. We didn't go into details, but I introduced it, which I'm going to go into details now. We talked about comfort. I didn't go into details as well, but that will be done today. And of course, convenience. And we'll be talking about all the other 3 that we haven't touched on. Safety is something we already covered. It was somewhat of a long video. I had to kind of cut it back to make sure it wasn't too long. So I'll try to make this as short as possible as well, because I know that your time is valuable. So the first thing is, we talked about the safety aspect, the areas in which you should be considering the factors that could affect the safety of passengers, crew, and aircraft, and some key terms that I introduced to you. If you haven't read on those key terms, please go ahead and do the reading, where you understand how these terms apply. Standard operating procedures, crew resource management, threat and error management, safety risk management. All these terms are further expanded in the Skyberry links that I shared in that particular video. So I'm not going to be going over that again now. But let's move on to the important areas now, which are the efficiency, comfort, and convenience. You see, these 3 areas, they are interrelated. And if you can present your ideas or your answers, putting into consideration some of these aspects, you are golden. And this is not me just saying things out of thin air. These are things that I've used in the past, and these are things that you will continue to see in the future. Customer service, providing an efficient operation, providing a comfortable flight for your passengers, making their life more convenient, are all things that everyone wants. And if you had an airline, or if you own an airline and you have people or pilots or your crew members putting the level of importance, some form of a level of importance to these factors, then your passengers will continue to do business with you, which makes you more profitable. Right? You never go out of business. That is a good thing. Understand, I know that you are not a pilot yet. Most likely you are an aspiring pilot looking for opportunities in aviation. But when you are given scenarios or questions that are testing your understanding of these things, they expect you to be able to use your knowledge. And the level of knowledge you demonstrate during those interviews is what shows how motivated you are, which further increases your chances of getting selected, especially with those cadet programs that I often cover. When we move on to the efficiency aspect of any operation, you will notice that some of the factors will still show up under comfort or under convenience. And that is intentional because some considerations may apply to different areas. And that's why I said they're somewhat interrelated. So how can you make a route more efficient? How does this apply to the airline? How does this apply to the pilot? In this case, you in this scenario, right? If you're given a scenario in which the route is maybe a factor in it, then you may think about, hey, efficiency. How can we make that route more efficient? So saving time would be a good thing to think about. And of course, saving fuel. And generally speaking, you're looking for a comfortable ride for your passengers. So like I mentioned, when it comes to route, the pilot plays a role in that. The airline plays a role in that, because if the airline plans an inefficient route, which is most likely not the case, then of course the pilot can step in to make it better, right? Things change. The pilot needs to be aware of those changes to be able to pick the most efficient route to save things like fuel, right? The aircraft, what role does the airline play in that? Buying modern airplanes, buying fuel efficient airplanes, upgrading the fleet. Those are things that the airlines do have. But when it comes to efficiency also, and the factor of aircraft, airlines do consider what we call load factor. And this kind of leads me to the subject of payload. If you think about load factor, how many passengers can they fit in an airplane for the routes that they are flying? If every airplane is constantly full, maybe they need to increase the size of airplane that goes to that destination. What level of understanding can you demonstrate in that as a pilot? Now, you are not probably going to be tested on the business aspect, but it's just good to understand some of these factors as well, because you are coming into the aviation industry. There's a reason why A380 isn't as popular anymore, because it's not an efficient aircraft to operate. Yes, it may provide convenience, it may provide comfort, but guess what? It doesn't make it an efficient airplane to operate for most airlines, hence the reason why they're phasing it out. So you get the point there. And of course, what role can a pilot play in delays as well? Or what role does the airline play? How can you optimize the boarding process? How can you speed it up to minimize delays? How can you increase the turnaround time of an airplane so that the airplane is not sitting on the ground? Now, this doesn't just apply to the pilot. All these factors, sometimes the dispatcher plays a role, sometimes maintenance crew plays a role, sometimes the ground crew plays a role, but ultimately the pilot in command has a lot to do with this, because the pilot in command, who is the PIC of the aircraft, can make things happen when they have a good understanding of how to increase efficiency. And this is something that as you face different scenarios or assessments during a selection process, you should keep these things in mind, because when you are asked the question, you should be able to piece the factors and think about safety, think about efficiency, think about comfort, think about convenience, especially when it comes to providing passenger service. Now, moving on to comfort, we're thinking about things like a smooth ride, right? What can you do to provide that to your passengers? Changing altitude might be one. Finding a better alternate route might be another one, right? Weather factors. If you know that the flight is likely going to be unable to make it to the destination because maybe the visibility is bad or something like that, right? Would you depart knowing that the plane can land? Or would you want to put your passengers in the terminal and wait for the weather to improve? These are factors that you may need to consider before you show up to an assessment, and think about these type of scenarios. Okay, think about this physiological needs of your passengers: food, water, again, the ability to relieve themselves if needed. And you could often find yourself in scenarios in which they might tell you you're about to depart an airport with an airplane that has an inoperative lavatory. What would you do, and what are the things you consider, right? If that flight is a long flight, you may have to think of delaying that flight and getting that thing fixed, because if there are only 2 lavatories on the airplane and one of them is out and you're going on a long flight, what if the other one goes out? What are you going to do? Now, these are things to just think about. I'm just introducing this information here because when you find yourself being asked certain questions, if you're not in the aviation industry, you may not be thinking of these factors. And that is why we are talking about these things. Entertainment. Like I given you example earlier of the A380, right? Depending on the route, depending on the type of service, depending on what the airline caters towards, some of these things can be considered, right? And of course, providing excellent customer service at all times. Think about customer service as a catch-all for all the factors that encompasses the topic of comfort. Being there for your passengers, getting their questions answered, providing some form of relief to them in times when things are uncertain or stressful. You as a pilot should be that, sounding voice of confidence on the flight deck or from the flight deck to the passengers. So those are some of the factors to consider when it comes to comfort. Now, in the subject of convenience, what can you do as a pilot? Here's another one. The route again shows up. Because if you're on a flight and you have to divert because of weather or other factors, maybe the airport is closed and you cannot land there, should you think about the convenience and choosing a route to the nearest suitable airport that still provides some form of ability for the passengers to reconnect on their flights? These are just questions. Remember, safety is always number one. And that's why I dedicated a whole video for safety, right? Safety is always number one. But after safety are some of these other things that I'm mentioning here, especially when it comes to flying passengers, very specific with that. And of course, the aircraft itself. How comfortable is the aircraft? Some airlines, they want to save money and they're having to provide very uncomfortable seats and very squished seat spacing, all to save every nickel and dime. But guess what? In the long term, those type of airlines end up going out of business. Yes, they might provide cheap service, but people always change their tastes as they get better, as they make more money. They want to spend more money. That's just a general habit of people. They want to take care of themselves. So the point here is, all these factors have been introduced to you. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with these factors I've shared with you? Now, I always share that, and I need to come back here, that when you find yourself in any scenario, always remember that, and I had to take that off my ears. Always remember that you have the ability to demonstrate how competent you are in answering questions like this. And I hope that you have found value in this one. I hope that you do your reading. Don't forget to check the links below, and I'll see you in a future video.